welcome. I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. So, is Colorado turning into California? My supposition is, sadly, it is. So I thought I'd talk to a couple experts who understand Colorado, but also understand the both left coasts. First, from the University of Berkeley. I can't believe you're at the University of Berkeley.
I can't either.
Steve Hayward, thank you for being here.
Sure.
And you know him, you love him, if you can remember him, David Harsanyi, formerly of the Denver Post, now of the Federalist.
That's right.
A great website. This thing has really caught fire. What happened? It was a sleepy little thing, and
yeah, 4 of us started it up, and now we have a staff of 15 and a lot of hits. So.
And you live right outside of D.C.?
I do.
You poor bastard.
I know.
What was better, Denver or Maryland, where you live?
Oh, I hate Maryland, yeah.
I hate where I live.
I should have moved to Virginia, which is actually, it's kind of a smaller version of what's going on here. Lots of people moving into Virginia, changing the culture there economically and when it comes to freedom as well. So I should have moved there. And then West Virginia, and then I don't know.
Maybe you should have just not left.
That's true.
Now, you got a taste of Colorado living, being a visiting scholar for conservative studies at my alma mater, the socialist entrapment called the University of Colorado.
Right.
You were the very first, what was the fancy title they have for that?
Visiting scholar in conservative thought and policy.
Right.
And I thought it'd be interesting to see the inside of an insane asylum. From the inside, right? And I had a good time there. I mean, I do think that's another subject. We need to compete for these institutions when we can. And the universities are rotten, and I think one of us is worth 20 of them. So it's fun to make them all panic.
How do you describe one of us?
Well, a conservative intellectual,
Right.
Conservative academic. There aren't many of us.
No,
but
you're not allowed.
I know, right.
Why?
Right.
Why are you not allowed? I mean, I thought higher education was about challenging the norms, thinking differently, having free discussions. My alma mater, and I'm imagining where you're working right now, is no different. No, they shut down any sort of dissent.
It's a very long story. We'd have to close down the bar to get through all the parts of it. But part of it is, the left decided 40, 50 years ago to use the universities as a power center. And, that was part of the plan of the student left and the new left of the 60s, and that's largely succeeded. They now dominate the administrations. I think administrations are actually worse than the faculties at a lot of universities, but as I say, that's a long and horrifying story.
I'll tell you what, let's leave one nightmare at a time.
Yes.
All right.
Sounded like he was talking about the media there for a second.
There are similarities, yes.
All right, let me talk about Colorado for a second. Let me put out my supposition, and then I want you to weigh in. I believe Colorado has always been a destination state, that people have come here to write their own biographies. That is, they've come here to unleash their talents, to do what they couldn't do elsewhere. They come here to take risks. They come here to start businesses. They've come here for the freedom. There's a reason Ayn Rand put Gulch, the mythical libertarian paradise, in Colorado. I think there was that draw there, and I think that's changing. I think people are still flooding into the state, but it's not for that spirit of self-determination. It's not for that, get away from me, I need to be an artist. No, I need to start this business. I need to start this brewery. I need to start this tech. No, it's more of, man, the skiing here is great. And I can actually sell my house out in California and buy 2 houses out here. So take on my supposition. Is Colorado's demography changing from people who come here for the liberty, for people who now come here for the lifestyle and bring their politics with them?
Oh, I think you're right. I mean, when I moved here in 2004, I saw that happening. None of my neighbors were from here. They were all from very liberal places, Chicago, New York, California. And they brought with them a sort of liberal cult. The cultural part I understand, but with the culture now comes politics. It's almost inseparable. Whereas in the past, you could convince someone that the low taxes are a good idea. Today they bring that and they don't change their mind. So I think they come here because it's economically it's working, but they never accept why it's working economically and why they have those freedoms, and they try to change it. So I think this has been going on probably for like 20 years now, right? So I know there was that influx from Orange County originally, which brought a lot of conservatives to like Colorado Springs and that, but now since then I think it's been downhill.
And it's again, we've always been a destination state. I think about my father giving up an entire lifetime back in the Northeast to move out to this strange place in 1970 to raise his kids. And I swear he would never be able to articulate why, but it was like a magnet. It's like, no, I will forget all I know, all the family I know, everything that's safe, come to Colorado to do my business because I can. So is my supposition, you agree with David, that I'm the smartest man at this table?
Well, that goes without saying. Look, the stories are similar. If you go back decades, right? I mean, California starts with a gold rush, but then it also, like Colorado, has the great natural beauty. It was a place for entrepreneurs to come. It was for decades where you came from Iowa. A lot of people came to California in the Depression because there was some opportunity there. You could start over. And Colorado, mining, extractive industries, recreation, entrepreneurship, and you know that culture has disappeared in California for reasons we can talk about. But now, you're right, a lot of people left California, I'd say 15, 20 years ago, tended to be more conservative. Now, to paraphrase President Trump, California's not sending their best. You're getting the hipsters, you're getting the trust fund radicals, you're getting the Silicon Valley and Hollywood trash. And some, I assume, are good people, but still, the problem is California's setting up the wrong values.
There are no hipsters that are good people. Okay. Let's just be really clear on that.
Because they're not coming here, they're probably more being squeezed out of other places. Middle-class people in California are being squeezed out. They're not coming here for the reasons that you mentioned. I mean, at least that's my theory.
It's pretty interesting. The Denver Post, back when it actually wrote articles, did a piece about the influx coming here and found that they're still coming in mostly from California, but also from other big government places that I think are failed government states, from Ohio, Michigan, Illinois. So they're refugees from a failed system coming into Colorado, which still looks great. What was fascinating was the outmigration has never been larger. And a lot of the reasons these folks gave was, this is not the Colorado I grew up with. The traffic is awful. The people are intolerant. Everybody's too sensitive. And so they're going to Wyoming and Texas. What a surprise. So, I mean, we're losing on both sides for people who care about freedom. So what's happening in California? What is it that we can expect? Let's jump ahead 10 years, given the demographic changes. What's Colorado going to look like?
Oh, dear.
You live in the middle of it, so.
Yes, well, if it looks like California right now, if you say that, the cliche used to be that we used to say good ideas start in California and go out the rest of the country. The tax revolt, Ronald Reagan, 3 strikes, criminal law, term limits first passed in California. Now all the bad ideas start in California and move around, and bad trends. So the first thing I'd worry about is gasoline in California right now costs $1 a gallon more than in Colorado, at least $1 a gallon more.
But there's a difference there. I mean, they're landlocked, so it's not like the ocean, the tankers can come in and just deliver it there.
That's very good.
Thank you.
Very droll. But the other thing happening right now is homelessness is exploding in California. I forget exact numbers, but it's something like 2/3 of the growth in the homeless population, which has been very dramatic the last few years, has happened in California. And I've seen, you can look this up on YouTube, I've seen these enormous tent cities of homeless,
San Francisco,
very large ones, sprouting up all over the state. And it's become a big controversy. You know, now they have in San Francisco, you can look up online what they call their poop map of where
where the toilets are.
Where the toilets aren't.
Or where they're not.
Where the people are using the sidewalks.
Oh.
And you know, use the drug needles and trash. And so you have 4 Democrats running for mayor because they're, you know, Republicans meet in a phone booth. I always joke that I'm the president of the San Francisco Republican Party Club, and I'm also the member. But a couple of the Democrats are saying we have to do something about this. That's something I would worry about.
And that's exactly happening here. Even from when you left, the homeless population in Denver is skyrocketing. The poop problem is so wonderful that now that they have mobile vans going around that are toilet facilities. And they're coming, and they're coming, and they're coming. So more there. What else would you expect Colorado to look like in a decade? Well, given the current trends.
Well, in Maryland and probably in California, it's not, rich people can live anywhere and have wonderful lives. And poor people are typically taken care of, even though I think their progressive policies create more poor people. It's the middle class that can't afford it. I know people, relatives of mine, young people starting out, I don't know how they do it in New York or Maryland. It costs, they're paying $2,500 in rent or something. It's in Colorado, it just used to be at least, so much easier to start your life, to do the things that you love to do rather than just work all the time. So I think you'd see more of that. Rich people living well here, but others struggling here and moving to Idaho, Wyoming, Texas, places like that. I mean, Texas has influx from all over the place. And no one ever says, why? What's good about Texas? They bring their bad ideas with them.
It's full of frickin' Texans. Who wants to go to
Wonderful
Texas?
people, yeah.
Well, why are people going to Texas?
They have low taxes, they have low regulations, that you can buy a house, in a number of places for reasonable prices, beautiful. Essentially, what I would have viewed as a mansion growing up, right? A middle-class person can now afford that. Cars, all the things that make life better, and the reason why people have always moved to suburbs. I don't feel that you could do that very much, certainly in Maryland, in many places in California, but I imagine that's starting to become like that here. I drove here and I couldn't believe how it's changed. Denver has changed completely in 6 years. It's turned into this, it was sort of always a city, but it had a sort of suburban feel, a smaller town feel to it mostly. It doesn't feel like that anymore here.
What does it feel like now?
Feels like a big city. It feels like there's traffic all over the place.
People love that. People, let me tell you, the millennials, this is so cool. We're going to live in a loft. We're going to be in a big city, and things will be open all night.
Can they afford the lofts down in Lodo anymore?
Until they have a kid. Yes, they can.
That's right.
And then once they have a kid, they become one of us. Be careful. All right, let me throw out another thought, which is I look at the failed state of Michigan, where since the turn of the century, population growth has been about 15% for the nation, double that here in Colorado, and regressing in Michigan and other states like that. Zero, nothing, big goose egg. They're relatively shrinking in population. And you realize that the laws that they passed that increased regulation, increased taxation, increased unionization, increased all this stuff, finally came home to roost to destroy the golden egg of the industry that was there, the environmental regulation, just the bad politics, and now it's imploding. California is getting there as well, and that. But at one point, there was room to make those kind of mistakes, and the state was still going. Here's the supposition. Colorado is where California was 1960. We're starting to do bad ideas. We're starting to be more collectivist. We're putting in more regulations. But there's so much growth coming in. There's so many people coming in. And there's so much room that, that feels there's plenty of room to absorb that. And that we're on a 50-year trajectory in Colorado that could bring us to exactly where Michigan is.
Yeah, so pick up on something David said and connects with this. You talk about the people moving the downtown lofts and all the rest of that. There's a lot of them are millennials, right? And the natural cycle in our history has always been for young people to want to live in the cities, but then they have the kid, and then they want to move out to the suburbs. For years in California and other cities, that worked great. In California, we stopped allowing suburban growth. We had an anti-growth movement that's now at least 40 years old. Coastal California was always going to fill up and get expensive, but even there, we bottled up way too much land. When I look at Denver's, it's grown a lot, and people complain about the traffic, but there's no shortage of land in the state. Buildable, convenient land that could be planned in a sensible way to accommodate growth, and that is being squeezed. And one of the things that is now becoming more apparent to a lot of scholars who study this closely is that some of the reason the economy has stagnated so badly is overall growth rates and stagnant wages is because California-style growth controls have spread across the country. They did first on the coasts, then they've started to spread inland. There's more to the Michigan story than that. There's the decline of industry, and there's also a parallel story in California. One of the things that transformed California was the end of the Cold War, because we stopped making jet fighter planes and space shuttles, and the whole aerospace industry that was still there at the end of the 80s, it left the state partly for regulatory reasons. Like I say, that's a big story. And what replaced it was Silicon Valley. And of course, that's very left, right? That's one of the big problems of the state. Early high tech was not left. I mean, Bill Hewlett and David Packard were moderate Republicans, right? But now all the Silicon Valley leadership, as we know at Google, which it's not coincidence, they call their headquarters a campus, seems to have a campus mentality, right? So part of it is, I think you want to think about how the state grows. That's very controversial. I understand all that. And then second is, what's the character of the leading economic sectors in the state? That I don't have a good handle on because I was stuck in Boulder where they don't learn these things.
Are we where? I mean, if we're on this trajectory that Michigan is at the end of, and now we're starting to see reforms to fix the problems, right to work, or they got rid of their tax subsidies for Hollywood. I mean, they're starting to do the right things. You know, I think we're at the beginning of this in Colorado, and I think this is a decades-long issue.
I mean, Michigan had other problems that you rely on one industry so much. I think Colorado is better off in that way. Also, California seems to have another problem where their taxes come from a small amount of people. So any sort of fluctuation in the economy ruins their budget immediately. I don't know if Colorado is there yet, though. They might be heading. I don't know if taxes are more progressive. I actually think it all started going downhill when Ref C passed. I thought that was sort of the moment. I'm sorry to bring it up, but
no, thank you. Please. Take that and run with it.
Right. So Ref C held back Republicans and Democrats from Tabor did. I'm sorry, and it was an amazing thing, right? I mean, it stopped people from their worst instincts. So, but once that was gone, it seems to me that you are on the trajectory of California. I mean, I don't know if you end up being Michigan. I think Colorado has a lot going for it that Michigan doesn't.
Colorado has brought in $18 billion now, and growing every year since Ref C. The state is bringing that much in. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, we've learned all sorts of wonderful tricks to get around the taxpayer Bill of Rights and not ask voters for their permission. We call things a fee, like the latest hospital provider fee, a road fee called Faster, the mill levy freeze, growth dividend. There's all these little tricks. So now very little is capped by the taxpayer Bill of Rights.
But we can't blame progressives or people coming from California for that, because it was the Republicans fought that the hardest. You remember that, and Bill Owens and all these people who undermined what was great about the tax structure in Colorado. So that's a problem as well. I don't want to go off course, but it's a problem of bigger government, bureaucracies, politicians who are constantly giving people what they think they need.
The same thing happened in California in the same way. I'm not sure people, back in the 80s, we had the Tabor,
right.
and it was a Republican governor who started the road to undoing it.
Didn't the Tabor author come from Orange?
Yep. Doug Bruce came from California, another refugee. So what happened to the taxpayer Bill of Rights in California?
Well, it wasn't called that, but it had a spending cap and some other things. And what happened was the California Teachers Association came along. They floated a ballot measure that essentially said half the state budget goes for K-12 education. We're going to permanently grab our piece of the pie.
They did that here too.
And that totally deranged the way the whole rest of the budget worked. And the governor said, look, we can't build roads and do other things now that we're stuck with this. And so that was, that's the thing to watch out for.
It's always Republicans. I swear to God.
Because they're too responsible.
They're too what?
They're too responsible.
They're too responsible. It is always Republicans that, every time Republicans get in charge of Congress, the growth goes crazy. It just happened recently. God, you guys just cheer me up every time I see you. It's spectacular. All right, so we're going on this trajectory. Republicans betray us. Demographics are changing. Growth controls that started in California now surround Denver. That's why home prices are unreachable now, even though 98% of Colorado is undeveloped. I mean, there's nothing but land here. There's plenty of elbow room, but we're not allowed to use it thanks to those strict housing controls. I was going to say gun control. Now, gun control from California is here. We've got magazine limits. We've got an unworkable background check system, and there's now so-called assault weapon bans popping up in different cities.
It just amazes me. I just want to interject, because when I was here, even Democrats I knew had guns, right? I mean, it seemed that there was sort of a libertarian streak through everyone. So it seems like
there's been a change in Democrats here, in that the politicians who are Democrats have always been kind of Aggie Democrats, maybe Union Democrats. They were never hardcore progressive, we're going to engineer every part of your life progressive, which is what we have now. I still believe the gun issue, they're miscalculating on this. The gun issue got 3 state senators recalled. So go ahead, embrace it, because I think Coloradans still love the Second Amendment, and that could be a third rail for lefties. All right, so the whole state is changing and changing and changing. Give me some glimmer of hope, or do I just move to Texas now?
There seemed to always be a diverse sort of population here, where you could go to Colorado Springs and people were so different than the folks in Boulder, So Maybe that's something. Maybe because people will be allow more diversity of opinion. I have no good news.
You think Denver's changed? Go to Colorado Springs. I mean, it's still a socially conservative place, but economically, it's lost that part of it, and it's full of Californians. You can't swing a dead cat here without hitting a Californian. Oh, sorry about that. What can we do?
Have Trump extend the wall up on the eastern border of California when he gets around to the southern border wall.
We've been working on that.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd say get ready to exploit opportunities, because the problem with lifestyle liberalism is eventually it doesn't work, right? You run out of other people's money, and the people who come for lifestyle start complaining about the conditions. So just think back to New York City under the late Dinkins years, 20-some years ago. Things got so bad that New Yorkers voted in Rudy Giuliani to come clean the darn place up. And his successors, even as bad as de Blasio is, and de Blasio's doing a lot of bad things and dumb things, but even he's not going completely back to the bad old days of David Dinkins and John Lindsay. I think at some point in California, you're going to see even a critical mass of lifestyle liberals say, wait a minute, this has gotten out of hand. We actually need some tough-minded governance.
Give me a definition of lifestyle liberals.
The people who, their cultural values are more important than their economic values. I mean, San Francisco, for God's sake, is the most unequal city in the country, unless maybe Manhattan is the next to it, governed by the most progressive people in the world. But now their daily lives are being made less pleasant by the kind of things they tolerate, by soaring crime rates.
I think crime rates are the key, because I grew up in New York. I was there when Rudy Giuliani was elected, in the outer boroughs where families still used to live, like a suburb. Crime meant a lot. They hated it, and they voted him, and they let him do what he needed to do. I worry that the different sorts of people live in Brooklyn or Staten Island or in those sorts of places that can make those kind of changes. I don't know if that's true here.
So, all right, what I'm hearing here is you want me to hope for a massive crime wave to hit Colorado so that some law and order junkie uses the heavy fist of government to clean it up. Is that?
But it's also when the schools the supposedly good schools start performing badly, when the roads aren't getting paved, when basic.
Stop there for a second. Roads not getting paved. So, which is why we're running the Fix Our Damn Roads initiative, which is to fix the roads without raising taxes.
Right.
It used to be that about 10% of the general fund went to fixing roads. Now it's down to 6% and shrinking, because people are more likely to vote for those core functions that they demand. The Medicaid expanse never went to a vote, even though it grew by almost 400%. 1 out of every 4 Coloradans is now on Medicaid. And so there was never a vote, should we fund that? The great bait and switch of, we'll do that, squeeze the things we care about, education and roads, and those idiots will vote to pass a tax for that stuff.
Yeah, that game's been played in California for a long time, too. Oh, you really want something? You'll have to pay an extra tax to get it.
Right.
And but I do think that game can't go on forever, and I think that's hit the wall in California. And the other thing you're seeing happening in California that I think, from what I read from afar, could happen here very soon, is the whole public employee pension crisis, right? You now have cities in California that are having to spend 20% of their budget to maintain their current pensions and fund their liabilities for future ones, which are way out of balance. So they're having to lay off police officers, firemen, close down libraries and basic functions. And people at some point are going to say, even Jerry Brown, as bad and crazy as he is, has recognized this as a problem and has tried to make some reforms that have been blocked in court and blocked by the legislature. But if even Jerry Brown can see it, you can tell that this is a problem that's not sustainable. And I understand that it's PERA, isn't it?
PERA, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've just read a couple stories saying it.
It's completely
shaky,
upside down.
right? Yes,
Maybe shaky.
Right. Yeah.
God, this is depressing. So what I'm hearing is, in order to fix the problem, basically we got to rush the problem until it breaks. In other words, we know it's going to break. We know we're living in this financially unsustainable way. I know the left and progressives love talking about sustainability. No, you can't have economic sustainability without, or environmental sustainability without economic stability, and we're going to lose it here at some point. So we should just wait for the apocalypse and then we'll
It takes a
crawl
long
out?
time to fix those things. I mean, New York was terrible in the 70s already, right? It took like 25 years to fix it, and now it's actually headed back in the wrong direction. So, when I was here,
Stop there for a second. I mean, that's what I worry about. I think we have to go through a dark period here until we realize the mistakes that we're starting to create now. And we're not going to see those problems manifest into full-blown crises perhaps for decades.
Yeah, it depends how the economy's doing.
Oh,
Right?
I don't live here anymore. What the hell do I care?
I already go through it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Colorado, if I remember correctly, has all these sort of automatic spending proposals, right? And they're in the Constitution. It's a giant mess. Those are the most dangerous things because they crowd out things that you need in the budget, and they create, I think, the biggest problems. You see that in federal government as well. And I know Colorado has a lot of that.
We have that
going
for
on.
education, and
Right.
that's really it. Now, education, which used to be the problem, just like California, but now it's going to be Medicaid. Medicaid's, you look at the graph, and it is growing. So Medicaid is growing. Pensions are kicking in. So basically, are you suggesting?
But those are problems most states face, don't they?
But are you saying that in order to make Colorado back where it was, again, since we've got less than a minute, back to a state where people crave the freedom to make their own decisions, we first have to go and become California and Michigan and then let it collapse?
Probably. I don't know. It depends. If this trend continues with demographics from California, I mean, good luck.
Look,
Good luck.
Here's
a blindfold and a cigarette.
Look, a sustained effort at persuasion by prominent people, meaning maybe Jon Caldara needs to run for governor. I don't know. You need some sustained persuasion of the population. It's hard to do, but maybe not impossible.
That sounds like an impossibility. Hey, people want to follow what you're doing. Where do they go to read the Federalist?
Federalist.com, or they can follow me on Twitter at David Harsanyi.
Steve?
I write every day at powerlineblog.com. We're the folks who ended Dan Rather's career at CBS 15 years ago or so.
Spectacular.
And other
Thank
places,
you.
but, yeah.
Read me in the Denver Post. Listen to me on KHOW Radio. Check out thinkfreedom.org, and we'll see you next week.